So Jordan Peterson appeared before the US Congress and responded to Democrat official liar Dan Goldman regarding the First Amendment and the Democrat attack on it. Here's first Dan Goldman. I'm going to say a few words, and then I'll play you Jordan's response.
Mr. Chairman, you continually say that it used to be that both parties agreed with the First Amendment. It didn't used to be. It is. It remains the case. We all agree with the First Amendment, but the problem is that the First Amendment is not absolute. It does not protect any single thing anyone says, and there are limits, and that's important. And what this committee has been trying to do for the last year and a half is to chill the federal government from monitoring what is going on social media and otherwise out there, so that misinformation and disinformation can run rampant in only Elon Musk's social platform and every other social platform, so that the Republicans, can benefit from it in November's election. That is why this committee exists.
The time of the gentleman.
And we have gotten no evidence to support any of these allegations.
He's right. The First Amendment, it is not absolute, but what is carved out are a very few number of exceptions, like immediate incitement to violence. And the standard to reach this is quite high. And in terms of misinformation that he's claiming that the Republicans benefited from, who really did? Who told us, for example, that the COVID vaccines were safe and effective, even after it was proven they did not prevent transmission or you from getting it? Who said that the lab leak theory was a debunked conspiracy theory? Remember when they came down with the heaviest of hands of censorship against those who stated exactly such? Anyone who dared question the COVID regime, the empire silenced, fired, censored. So who actually was benefiting from so-called disinformation? In California, for example, they passed Bill AB 2098, which would have brought doctors before a medical board at great time and expense to them, of course, and likely would have revoked their medical licenses, that which they invested their entire lives to attain. And who is in charge of California? The last time I checked, I remember it was a supermajority state of Democrats, including the governor, who went out to eat at the French Laundry restaurant, the most expensive in the world, racking up a $12,000 wine bill, unmasked with all of his lobbyist buddies, while everyone else was told to stay locked inside. Skate parks were filled with sand. Paddleboarders arrested off of the coast, nobody around them. And basketball hoops had beams installed over them. And yet we were not allowed to discuss whether or not these were socially beneficial decisions, at least not until we were triple vaxxed. Then maybe the state believes that you wouldn't say a word because you've bought into the propaganda to begin with. And by the way, shout out to all you Pfizer shareholders out there. And who told us that the Hunter Biden laptop was disinformation and insisted it had all the earmarks of a Russian hoax, while they were propagating the Russiagate conspiracy against Donald Trump for 3 years straight that Democrats still won't admit was a fabrication? And now you want the ability to claim that it was the Republicans that were and are benefiting from disinformation. It's confession through projection. Cast the aspersions on your opponent of exactly the actions that you are taking. And what this proves is the perilous position of our First Amendment as the Democrats continue to desire to undermine it. That which allows us to interact and settle our disputes peacefully through discourse, and how the Democrats want to just take an axe to it until that boulder splits open Dan Goldman, this lying congressman, is the face of the Democratic Party regarding their anti-free speech stance. And when adherence and faith to the Constitution is questioned, when theirs is, they reflexively blame the other side. I'm not taking that. Today, it's the Democrats that are virulently stymieing speech, and they deserve our derision, an automatic vote for the other side that will uphold our freedoms and our right to speak freely. Now let's hear what Jordan, by the way, had to say.
I don't think people understand the degree to which they are profiled online and to which their virtual representation is now an iconic representation of them, nor do they understand that they have no rights whatsoever to that representation. So for example, let's say we turn our information about our purchasing habits over to the bank when we open a bank account. 30 years ago, that wasn't such a big problem. With AI systems, it's a problem that's so big you can't imagine it. I mean, I'm certain that my staff could find the data online to absolutely predict your voting patterns with 95% accuracy. You have no idea what sort of digital footprint that you're leaving behind you, and there are almost no protections for that. And so now, and you also asked about the First Amendment.
Yes.
Well, we have very weak free speech protections in Canada, and I can tell you that is not going well. And so the combination, in my country, the combination of that and the invasive technology that we're producing at a rate that beggars the imagination, produces a threat to the integrity of sovereign citizenship, the likes of which has not yet been experienced. Right? And that's what this committee should be concentrating on. Like, it's very interesting to watch it because it devolves continually into discussion of a particular event, serious though that event was. It's like, no matter how serious that event was, it pales in comparison to the potential severity of the issue that we're attempting to point to with regards to our testimony. These artificially intelligent systems can do things you can't imagine. And not only can they are and they will. And that will be abetted by the collusion between large corporations and government. And it's certainly the case that the people who stand on the left, especially with regards to their, what would you say, skepticism of large corporations, which is often perfectly warranted, should be utterly terrified about this.
And to follow up with what Jordan just said, the Patriot Act, remember that back in after 9/11? And how people willingly gave up their constitutional rights in order to feel safe? And then the same act was used against the same conservatives, at least today, that were its biggest proponents originally, giving the state more power. And if you think that the Democrats are going to remain in the driver's seat forever, well then, by all means, go ahead and continue your onslaught of it. But when power shifts, don't be surprised when the other side, much like the leftists are doing against the conservatives today, use the same freedoms that you've destroyed to punish you. And these protections that were offered to everybody will have eroded, not just for the right wing, but for all of humanity.